Have you ever just unlocked your phone with your face or typed a quick search query and kind of just assumed the tech working behind the scenes is totally objective? I mean, we all do it, right? We tend to think of artificial intelligence as this pure, unbiased math, like a flawless mirror just reflecting the real world back at us. But is artificial intelligence truly neutral? Let's talk about that. Well, the data we're looking at today completely shatters that illusion of neutrality right out of the gate. The source material highlights some honestly disturbing real-world outputs from algorithms we use literally every single day. We're talking about Google Photos mistakenly applying a gorilla's label to Black users, or Google Images returning pictures of Black women with natural hair just because someone searched for the term ugly hair. And the stakes get even higher. Facial recognition software actually leading to the wrongful arrests of innocent Black men. These aren't just minor technical glitches. The research we're exploring today suggests they are symptoms of a much, much deeper systemic issue. So, welcome to this explainer. Today, we are going to break down a heavy but absolutely fascinating academic paper by researcher Julio Araújo. Now, the paper introduces a concept called algorithmic textuality and necroalgorithmization. And, okay, I know those sound like incredibly dense academic terms, but don't worry, I'm going to guide you through this research step by step. We'll use our visuals to make these complex ideas crystal clear and show you exactly why they are highly relevant to how you interact with tech every single day. Here is our roadmap for the explainer today. We'll start by debunking the myth of neutrality, then look at how algorithms actually function as a form of text. From there, we'll map out a visual triangle of exclusion, explore the chilling idea of the involuntary prompt, look at how this all works in practice, and finally, discuss how the author suggests we rewrite the code. All right, let's jump straight into our first concept, the myth of neutrality. Okay, let's really dive into this. The author is basically demanding a massive paradigm shift in how we think about computing. Now, the myth tells us that an algorithm is just neutral math, objective code, just doing logical operations. But the reality, according to the paper, is entirely different. Araújo argues that an algorithm is actually a performative text, meaning it carries the historical bias of the society that created it. It doesn't just calculate numbers, it actually acts out historical prejudices. And that naturally leads us right into our second concept for today, the algorithm as text. Now, what's really interesting here is how the author frames computer code through the lens of critical applied linguistics. Think about it. Human language has never been a totally neutral medium, right? It always carries cultural baggage and power dynamics. So if algorithms are trained on vast amounts of our human data, our texts, our images, our entire histories, they inherently absorb all of that baggage. Because of that, algorithms become performative texts that organize meaning and regulate social practices. So this technical language, which is masked as pure math, actually operates as a regulatory discourse that just reproduces existing systems of power. So how exactly does this bias actually travel through a computer system? Well, we can visualize this through what the paper calls the triangle of exclusion. The paper introduces this highly effective visual framework called the discursive triangle of algorithmic textuality. Let's break down how this process works. Step 1 is the text prompt. This is the input, the raw data being fed into the system. Step 2 is the text algorithm. This is that opaque black box where the data actually gets processed. And finally, step 3 is the text response, which is the output, like your search result or an automated decision. Now, the absolutely crucial point here is right there in the middle at step 2, the text algorithm. This black box calculates probabilistically, sure, but it completely lacks the human ability to interpret social context. According to the research, this is exactly where historical inequalities are mathematically codified into rules. It literally takes human prejudices found in the input data and permanently locks them in as statistical associations. Building on that, the research introduces a particularly chilling concept for our fourth section, the involuntary prompt. Think back to the text prompt step we were just talking about. Often, our inputs are voluntary. You type a search into Google, or you actively ask your smart speaker for the weather. But conversely, the author argues that a massive amount of algorithmic input today is involuntary. We're talking about facial recognition cameras on the street tracking your movements, smart speakers ambiently listening for trigger words, hidden metadata quietly tracking your digital footprint. Basically, your daily life is being extracted without your explicit active consent, turning your very existence into processable text. And the consequences of this involuntary data extraction, they are absolutely staggering. According to data cited in the paper, in Rio de Janeiro, a massive 80% of wrongful arrests caused by facial recognition technology involved Black people.
The author really anchors this heavy theory in real human stories to show the severe harm caused by the involuntary prompt. For example, there's the case of Danilo Felix, a young black man who was arrested twice, unjustly, due to flawed photographic recognition algorithms. Or take the Sylvia Galva case in Florida, where police actually tried to use an Amazon Echo smart speaker as an algorithmic witness in a murder investigation. It really highlights how these domestic devices just capture ambient data constantly. The research notes that for marginalized groups, these systems routinely produce widespread false positives, which literally leads to a real-world loss of liberty.
Okay, now it's time to tie all these mechanics together into the author's central theory for Section 5, necroalgorithmization in practice. And this brings us right to the core of the paper. Necroalgorithmization is defined as the intersectional automation of exclusion and dehumanization, where algorithms reproduce historical prejudices and decide who gets access to a dignified life. Basically, the author is arguing that the discriminatory outputs we see around us aren't just accidental glitches. No, they are systemic, automated exclusions inspired by the political concept of necropolitics that determine whose lives actually hold value in the digital age. And this brilliantly illustrates the entire framework in action. Remember that triangle we looked at earlier? Well, here it is applied to the real-world case of Brazilian influencer Sah Oliveira. The text prompt was the search term ugly hair in Portuguese. The text algorithm then applied a historical, racist, and sexist association logic that it picked up from its training data. And the result? The text response outputted images of black women with natural hair. The machine literally transformed an ideological bias into a visible, authoritative technical response.
Let's see how this builds on Kimberlé Crenshaw's vital concept of intersectionality. The paper emphasizes that these algorithms don't just fail on the basis of race alone or gender alone. They actually amplify harm at the specific intersections of these identities, like being both black and a woman. The algorithm effectively erases human complexity. It turns marginalized bodies into evidence of a technical norm, which effectively just automates their exclusion.
Which brings us to a critical question for our sixth and final section, rewriting the code. So how do we respond to this disillusionment with the tools we rely on every day? Well, here's what you should take away from this, based on the author's call to action. First, we have to completely unlearn our trust in the machine. We must stop accepting algorithms as neutral authorities. Second, we need to read their outputs critically, basically treating them as ideological texts rather than objective facts. Third, the research urges us to demand an intersectional ethics of code from tech companies. And finally, society really needs to redesign these systems to be entirely auditable and pluralistic. I'm going to leave you with this incredibly powerful and provocative thought from the paper's author, Julio Araujo. He writes, "Algorithms not only calculate, but enunciate, and their enunciation, naturalized under the guise of neutrality, becomes a form of discursive government that organizes the world and distributes the value of lives." It really makes you question the authority of the very algorithms governing our digital lives, doesn't it? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions and keep looking critically at the technology right in front of you.